Welcome to Crown Level Confidence with Caliah, the podcast where we empower and inspire you to achieve unstoppable confidence and self-belief. I'm your host, Caliah, a wife, mom, entrepreneur, as well as a certified life coach and motivational speaker with a background in humanities and communication. I'm excited to navigate this transformative journey with you. In each episode, I'll bring you candid conversations, practical tips, and inspiring stories from remarkable women who have conquered many challenges and risen to new heights. Get ready to have your crown straightened as we listen, learn, and laugh together so we can level up. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this newest episode of Crown Level Confidence, where we're leading women worldwide to lower their stress and raise their confidence through candid conversations of women of power and wonder and excellence. I am so excited for today's very special guest. I know her in a couple of different capacities, and I am excited to share her with you all today. So I have with me Judge Regina Matthews. We're going to call her Regina for today. So hey, Regina.
Hello, Caliah. How are you?
I'm great. I'm ready to have this conversation. So before we dive in, I'm going to share with our audience a little bit about you, and then we're going to have a conversation that is more about you and how we can inspire another woman. Sound good?
Sounds perfect. Thank you.
So let's see here. We have Regina. She is a wife, a mother of two, who also serves as Magistrate Court Judge in Gwinnett County, Georgia. She grew up in inner city Chicago under circumstances that could have broken her spirit and her will. But because of her faith in God and love from her family, she has lived to fulfill what she considers her dream life. Get excited, y'all. When she's not with her family or on the bench, Regina enjoys giving back to the community and especially welcomes opportunities to mentor young girls and young women. Y'all get excited. Doesn't she just sound like the best? I'm so happy you're here.
I am happy to be here. Thank you for that.
Awesome. So, that was a power-packed introduction, nonetheless, but I know that there's more in between the layers. So kind of take us through what that's like. Inner city Chicago. I'm a Cali girl. Okay. I've been suburbanized. I don't know that life. So kind of bring us more, into your upbringing and now where you are today. I'm sure you've seen and done a lot.
I have. And then, stop me if I get too long-winded, but, my story definitely started, in Chicago. And I will say I grew up in a neighborhood where we saw a lot growing up as kids. When I say we, I mean like my siblings and I and the friends that we grew up with. We saw a lot, and probably more than any children should see and experience. But all the things you think about growing up potentially in an inner city. Our neighborhood was rampant with gangs and drug culture and violence and all of that. But and look, you can go and look up the Austin community of the west side of Chicago and read all about the bad stuff, because that's what they show a lot of and tell you a lot about. But what I will say is, the neighborhood I grew up in consisted of a lot of people with a lot of resilience too. And in a lot of ways, it shaped, who I am and how I view life, because sure, we had some circumstances that were not great, but we had a community of people who looked out for each other. I think about the times when like my mom would have like a barbecue just, out of the blue for no reason. And she would end up feeding other kids in the neighborhood. Everybody would come by and say, Miss Parker is cooking, so let's go down and get some food off the grill. And she would feed like the community. But in the same, at the same token, when we had hard times, because my mom was a single working mom, she worked a lot, but there were times where we struggled too, and it was returned to us as well. I can remember very vividly a family, who basically said, "Come, like, look in our freezer, get what you need," and like they looked out for us. When my mom couldn't take us to church like she used to because of her work schedule and a lot of things she was dealing with, we had a family that took us in and was like, "Okay, y'all are just going to church with us then." So my brother and I, we would pile up in their car, and they became our family. And so I think more about times like that than all of the negativity, I guess, that I could focus on. But that taught me a resilience and a perseverance that I think it may be lost to some people who don't know a lot about the folks who grew up in those kind of neighborhoods and circumstances. So, I took all of what I learned about, my faith and, those times where I did spend like all day Sunday in church, and what I learned about community and family, sometimes being not just the people you're related to, but, your community and how communities can look out for each other, even though, we may not always have the best of circumstances, that there's still a lot of great things that can come from those environments. So fast forward to today, I am living my dream, as you said in my introduction. I guess people say I defied the odds, right? Again, you can go and look at statistics, or whatever, but maybe it wasn't, on my bingo card, so to speak, for me to make it out of the hood and go on to live the life that I'm blessed to live. But I don't think I've done anything exceptional. My parents, even though I didn't grow up with my dad, both of my parents instilled the importance of education. And, faith, again, is always been a really huge part of my upbringing. So, I relied on faith, and I remembered the importance of education. And I really think that I've ended up where I am because of all of those things, not because I did anything exceptional. I did what I was supposed to do, I feel like.
And that makes sense. And I personally, I appreciate the fact that you're like, hey, listen, I worked hard. I gave it to God. I persevered, didn't let yourself get limited or, make excuses and put things onto yourself. And for, again, myself personally, and a lot of women in our community, we're often seen as the exception, right? We're often kind of
Yep.
set aside to say, oh, well, I mean, you did that because you're great, or you did that because you're smart. And it's
Right.
like, well, I did like you said, what I was supposed to do. I read the
Right.
rules, I read the standards, right? I pushed myself, I applied myself, again, with God's grace and with the community, that you were able to build and hang on to over time. But I just really can appreciate the realism that you have, in that, and the how you gracefully, state it, because a lot of people, they'll disqualify themselves,
Mm-hmm.
thinking, oh, well, I'm not smart enough to be a lawyer, let alone a judge, like, well, wait a minute, well, why? And that's what these conversations are about. So at what point in your life, considering everything that gone through, your experience, like you said, those statistical things, what was it inside of you that said, you know what? I want more, I can do more, I can be more, and I'm going to go after it?
So I don't remember the exact moment per se, because I'm going to be honest with you. I faced the same insecurities and lack of conviction and self-confidence that I'm sure a lot of women face. And I've had my moments of that for sure. And, I can give specific examples in a little bit, but I knew from a young age, really, really young, that I wanted to be a lawyer. And I honestly don't know how that seed was planted, because I didn't grow up knowing lawyers. No one in my family had become a lawyer. But my mom would say, like, I would be sitting in front of the TV, and this was like kindergarten, first grade, after school, and the only thing I would watch was the People's Court. Literally, a 5 or 6 year old little girl plopped in front of the TV watching People's Court. And the original judge, I remember his name. It was a long time ago. I'm like well into my 40s now, but his name was Judge Wapner. And he was the original judge for the People's Court. And so I don't know, I just remember doing that. And I don't know what the interest was there, but I took that. And as I got a little older, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, because I did see some injustices, that I knew people that I knew well had witnessed, in their lives. And I was sort of on the sideline watching things and thinking, like, this just doesn't seem right. And so I always had that, like, I'm going to go out there and, make a difference and serve the community and be part of this system of justice. So I would say, like, middle school on, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I never thought, to be honest, that I would end up as a judge. Like there were no judges that looked like me. It just was not even in the realm of my thinking.
Mhm.
But even into adulthood, I was blessed to have a lot of different professional opportunities. And again, just I think as a result of my hard work and faith, but just applying yourself and not limiting yourself. Now, again, I was full of self-doubt sometimes. And the fact that I was able to become a judge is really sometimes still very surreal for me because, I just looking back, you just would never have guessed that little girl from the west side of Chicago would have that opportunity. But going back to the lacking confidence and conviction, I will tell you now I'm more involved and I think about what people would consider failures as setbacks and not failures.
Mhm.
But there was a point that I didn't see it that way. And I will tell you that I'm going to be very vulnerable now. When I was in law school, and I did pretty well in law school, I had that, what do we call it? Like the imposter syndrome?
Yes.
That lasted through law school. I still
Wow.
thought, even though I, graduated college, 3.5 years, a semester early, magna cum laude, like I've always done well academically. Still in law school, I just thought I don't belong. I don't know how I ended up here. And so that carried on until I took the bar exam. So I graduated law school, having done well, and I'm sitting for the bar exam. Everything is riding on this one test. And I sat there thinking, I'm going to fail this test. And guess what? The first time I did fail that test.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't because I wasn't prepared. It wasn't because I wasn't knowledgeable. Heck, I went to one of the best law schools in the country. I graduated with great marks, and again, prior to that, I had all these accolades from college and all the things. So I was prepared. I knew the information, but I failed the test because I went in already being convinced that I was going to fail it. And I
Yeah.
lacked
Self-sabotage.
conviction. Yes, I lacked conviction. I lacked confidence. And so when I retook the exam, it took a lot of like self-evaluation, like trying to figure out what happened here, what went wrong. And I went into this moment of meditation and really just having a talk with God and coming out of that feeling like I don't deserve this, that I'm not ready for it. I'm not, I haven't earned it. And so when I went in the second time, I was in a different headspace, and thank God I did, pass it the second time. When obviously I should have passed it the first, but it was because, and that's just one example of like something that really happened to me where I had to step back and say like, what are you doing? Like God prepared you for this. You're more than ready. You're more than capable. But it's the limitations we put on ourselves sometimes that hold us back. And
Absolutely.
and so yeah, again, that's just one example. And I refuse to look at things like that as failures
Mhm.
because it's only a failure if we don't take that experience and grow from it.
Right.
It was a setback. And had I not gone through that experience, I don't think I would be in a space now where I can walk in a room, any space, and own it and not have to feel like I need to shrink myself to
Mhm.
belong because I did enough of that. And so that was a really pivotal moment for me.
That's huge. I mean, yeah, I mean, that sets the tone for, the rest of, your career, right? That's the foundation, rather. Um, my one semester of law classes, the word that came to mind was precedent. I'm like, that's the precedent. But
That's right.
um, so what would you say in another way? What would you say to the women out there who they're in your spot right now?
Hmm.
They are, technically prepared, right? They are
Right.
educated, they're sound, they're at a level where they're on the cusp of that new level and they're holding
Hmm.
themselves back for one reason or another. What are the
Right.
words that you want them to not only hear from you, but to be able to say to themselves, because again, they're educated, they're prepped, they're
Mhm.
ready, but they're in their own way. Like,
Right.
help us get out of our way.
Yeah. And so the first thing I would say is just remember, because, we all go through times that are really, really difficult. And usually that's when we have the most self-doubt, when something's really, really hard. And I would just say, remember that your journey is harder, perhaps, right? Because your calling is higher. And so just think about that. Like I feel like sometimes we believe that we're going through a certain moment in life because, God is just he's forsaken us, right? But I always say there's a method to the madness. And maybe, just maybe, God is pressing us because our calling is so much higher than we give him credit for. And sometimes I like to use the metaphor of, like, how artists, when you create like a beautiful glass sculpture, I mean, it doesn't start off that way. It has to go through a lot of, like, heat and a lot of pressure to get to that beautiful piece of artwork. And so, yeah, think about that in those moments when you're riddled with self-doubt, but you know that you're prepared. At the end of the day, you know that you're prepared. You know that God isn't, I think about the story of Moses too. I use a lot of analogies. So like the story of Moses, right? You think about this person who lived this life of luxury in a palace and living good, and God sent him on this journey to save the people of Israel. And so he had to go from living in the palace to go wandering in the wilderness. I think, what is it, 40 years he lived in
Mhm.
the wilderness leading the people, right? And the whole time I'm sure he's questioning God, like, why, are you putting me through this? He had challenges from Pharaoh. He had all this, even the people he were leading doubted him
Yep.
and gave him grief. And then he had his own, and the way I read the story, of Moses, he had his own doubts, right? And
Mhm.
questioning himself the whole time, and like, Lord, why me? And like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Like, but in the end, God had a plan. God
Yeah.
had a plan. And guess what? God's plan was fulfilled because Moses successfully led the people, out of captivity, and to the promised land. And so I just think about things like that when I'm going through, when I'm having that self-doubt, like God is putting me through this, whatever it is, or exposing me to this, whatever it is, this hardship or this setback, for a reason. And I may not know it at the moment, but hold on to just knowing that God might be molding you.
Absolutely. That's powerful. I was scrambling. I should have been more prepared. I was scrambling to get my notes together. She said your journey might be harder because your calling is higher. That is one for the wall, okay? You
Mhm.
heard it here, Regina Matthews. So we're not quite at the final word yet, but it is quickly approaching. But I have a burning question. I get asked
Yes.
this question all the time, and I'm sure our listeners, our ladies, they're thinking this in the back of their minds because I mentioned something that's really important in your bio, and we haven't even touched on it yet. There's not enough time.
I
We'll have
told
to
you
have you
when
back
I
in the
start
future.
talking, yeah, I could go all day, but
No, it's good. So there's an important element over here. We grazed over it, and it's so massive to a good number of women in our community. You have had incredible success, right? You were this stellar law student. You were crushed it as a lawyer. You became a judge. You're doing all these wonderful things. You guys, I don't know if you remember, if you're going to rewind it and listen to the intro, but our girl Regina here is a wife and a mother. Okay, those things didn't just fall into her lap all of a sudden. They didn't just, happen overnight. These children are not raising themselves. The husband is not husbanding alone. So bring us in as much as you feel comfortable on what this dream life is like, not only just the career, but as a
right.
woman who is navigating, because this conversation will never get old. People ask me all the time, how do you do all the things you do? You're so busy, you have these small kids and a husband and a
Mhm.
house and a dog. Yes, okay, and you and I have that in common. And I see you and I'm like, ooh, yes, she's, several steps ahead of me. And I love that because I'm like, ooh, yes, okay, she's doing it, I'm doing it, we're doing it, someone else is gonna do
Right.
it. We're going to keep it going. So for those of us women in this crown level community, we're considered crown jewels. We are those highly ambitious women that, yeah, we face
Hmm.
self-doubt every once in a while secretly when no one's looking. But it's possible and we're doing it. So kind of bring us into that family situation. I know it's not always perfect all the time. I don't believe
No.
necessarily believe in balance. It's like a harmony, 80-20, 70-30, 90-10. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, and so thanks for asking that question because my family is such an important part of my life. And I don't know that I've ever figured out the balance thing, to be honest, Khalil. Like, I feel like some days, it is 90-10. Some days it's 80-20. Some days it's 60-40. Whatever. Every day looks different. But what I will say is I am made whole because of the gift of my two sons, my amazing sons, and my husband. And being the spouse of a really ambitious woman, and the mother of a really ambitious woman cannot be easy. So I call them all collectively my boys. I give my boys a lot of credit because, when I sit back and think about like the sacrifices they have to make, not only because I work hard and a lot of my time is devoted to work, but as you know, Caliah, on top of just being a judge on the bench every day, now I've thrust them into this world of politics because I'm running for Superior Court in my circuit, and so now they're thrust into not only having a mom they have to share with the litigants that appear before her every day, but now we have to share it with all of Gwinnett County. So, they're really great and they help keep me grounded and they help me remember that I am more than Judge Matthews. To them, I'm just mom. And to my husband, I'm just Bay or Pooh is really what he calls me most of the time, Pooh. And so, yeah, I am blessed to have, I never knew that was going to have kids. Like when I was growing up, I was just like, oh, it's a lot of responsibility and, just kind of seeing the world and sort of how things had evolved. I'm just like, it'll be hard raising kids in this world. But, God saw different. God saw different, and my two sons, one is actually 18 now. So I guess I don't know if I can consider him my child anymore, but he's
Always.
always my baby. And then my youngest is 14, but raising them has been like one of my greatest joys. And really life I feel like is not worth living if it's not for them and for my husband and for our dog and the life we've created, all the things that I'm doing in my career. To share it with them is really what makes it meaningful. So they're a whole vibe, and and they create a whole vibe for me. Yeah,
Awesome. I love that. And thank you for sharing. Like I said, it's something that cannot be unacknowledged,
for
right?
sure.
I have personal experience with this, so anyone who knows me, very well since pretty much college, I aspired to do the career path that you're currently on. That was always my aspiration. I was going to be a lawyer, and then I was going to go into judgeship. Like if you
Yeah.
would have asked me at, anywhere between ages like 16 to 20, which, is no, not 16, middle school is beyond 16. Anyway, middle school through college, it would have been, oh, she's aiming for Supreme Court. Like she's going to take it all the way to
Mhm,
the top,
mhm,
right? I was heavily discouraged along the way. And
mm,
ultimately, it was my choice to not, go into law school and, to choose a different path, which I'm very
yeah,
happy with
right.
now. But along the way, I was heavily discouraged from pursuing that career path because I was constantly being told or, guided, redirected,
Mhm,
however, oh, well,
mhm,
there's not really a lot of space for you to have family time, or you'll be
mm,
single for a
yeah,
long time, or, it gets lonely when if you're successful at it, and just all these different
mm,
things. And
yeah,
I allowed that to dissuade me from, my ultimate dream, your reality, if you will, at the time, to say, okay, well, if that's how it really is, then I need to do something different, right?
yeah.
Again, I have really no regrets. I give all glory and honor to God because, He molds me, and directs my path. But I
And you're
know
where
that
you're
there are
supposed to
women,
be. You're where
right?
you're supposed to be. Yep.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. Just for the other women who, are going through that now and they may not feel as confident yet to double down.
Right.
when people are coming at them to say, oh,
Hmm.
it's not possible, or it'll be too hard, or it's not worth
Yeah.
it. And so that's why I feel like it's important for us to amplify, our stories and not over glamorize it, not to
Absolutely.
mislead anyone. It's all not
Yeah.
always butterflies and rainbows. And
Oh,
sometimes,
for
you
sure.
fight with your spouse, and sometimes the calendar is not updated and it's inconvenient and all the things, right?
All the things.
But it is possible and it can be fulfilling. So I just, like I said, I appreciate you, bringing us into that behind the scenes a little bit, because we need to combat this whole, women have to choose. We're so blessed with so many
Right.
great skills and
Right.
abilities, and I do believe that our husbands can rise to the occasion to
Absolutely.
co-parent. Like, come
Absolutely.
on.
And I have to give my husband credit because he is just as hands-on as I am, and it's important, to have a partner. Or at least it has always been important for me. Now, every relationship is different, and families look differently. What works for me may not work for other people. There are some moms who may feel like they want to devote all of their time to rearing their children. And that's okay too. There is no right or wrong answer. But certainly for the women out there who are thinking like, you want to have a life outside of raising your children. And again, the other way is totally fine. But yeah, just know that it is possible. And don't let other people dictate what your life should look like, because what God has for you is for you. And if he wants you to be a successful businesswoman and have children and a husband and all the, fabulous life, then that's what's going to happen. But also understand that if that's not what your life looks like, then that is okay too. But you define your life, right? Don't let other people define it for you. Um, and we as women, I think, again, I can relate to that. I can relate to people saying like, you're doing too much, you're team too much. Like
Right.
there's no
But
way you're going to
balance.
be able to fulfill all these things you want to fulfill and have, a balanced life. I've heard that so many times, you know. But you prove people wrong, right? You just prove people wrong. And here I am living a happy, fulfilled life, with balance of work and family. And again, I don't always get it perfectly right. I really don't. But, it is what it is. And I'm happy, and it looks good for me.
Right.
Right.
Yes, and that's what matters the most. So the time has come.
It's that
No one
time
heard
when
the timer
we're
because I
speaking.
silenced it. I caught it in time. But it is time for the final word. And I could have this conversation all day, every day, but we're going to wrap it up, for our listeners. So this is a point in the conversation where, where the girls are getting out the car. The lunch break is almost over. They got to get the kids up
Yeah.
from their naps. So we were wrapping up the conversation. Regina, Judge Matthews, all the different tiaras and hats that you wear. What is the final word that you want to leave us ladies with from this conversation?
So, I'm so glad we had this conversation today, Caliah, because just earlier I was reading something on social media, and I'm a part of Jack and Jill Incorporated. I don't know if you know a lot about that organization, but
Not a whole lot, but it's on my radar.
so anyway, the point is, the Jack and Jill organization pours into us as mothers. And someone posted today the following, and it really resonated with me. It said, release what you can't control. God never asked you to carry what only He can fix. And then it also reminded me that we have to pray specifically and boldly. And finally, rest in God's timing. Transformation often happens quietly before it shows publicly. So those three things, I was like, wow, how timely is this? Because I knew we would be having this conversation. And that's something that I think all women can remember. And if nothing else, you know, just think about your faith. Think about all those before you that have persevered and have overcome. And as women, we have a resilience, an innate resilience that I think we have to own. And so during those tough times, just remember, your journey might be harder because your calling might be higher. And just hold on to that.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And I know our listeners do too. So you guys, I I have thoroughly enjoyed Regina Judge Matthews here on the conversation with us. And I know you all have to make sure you comment, send her some encouraging words, whatever resonated with you. Go ahead and show her that love. No, she's not going to clear your parking tickets. She's not going to get involved in your cases. So don't even try to go that route, you guys. Just kidding. Our members don't do that. But again, we so appreciate you taking the time out of your clearly very busy, successful life to pour into another woman to help her overcome imposter syndrome or overcome, whatever is holding her back in her confidence to get to that next level. So if you all are want to keep in touch with Judge Matthews like I do, you can follow her on social media. We have all of her accounts linked in the description of this podcast. So at Judge Regina Matthews on socials. You can also visit www.judgematthews.com. Okay. And get more information about her platform. I am happy to say I have publicly endorsed Judge Matthews' candidacy for the Superior Court in Gwinnett County. And I will continue that sentiment by saying she's always been very clear, very kind, and very consistent. Those things are important to me and pillars that I believe are important for those who represent us and are a part of our whole judicial system. And her, being the epitome of those things, I believe she belongs in office. So I'm going to use my platform to echo that.
I appreciate that so much. Thank you for saying that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have to, stick together, not just, as women, but in our community. And y'all, if you're not registered to vote, please do so. We have listeners worldwide, and you may be in different municipalities and different structures, but however you can be involved civically, just take the time to look it up. Google it real fast. Ask a friend who's qualified to lead you in the right direction. But look it up, participate, exercise your rights because it is very important. You have a voice to use to influence, your community and your way of life, and it's your job to do it if you have that privilege. Like
you better preach, Caliah. You better preach. Look, we can do a whole nother episode on that. Don't even get me started with using our voice and voting. Oh my gosh.
Absolutely. So y'all stay tuned after this for some announcements and words from our sponsors. And again, thank you so much for your time with us today.
It was my pleasure.
Well, y'all, it has been another fabulous episode of Crown Level Confidence Podcast. And, as usual, I love y'all. But more importantly, I'm grateful that you love me too. All right, y'all, we're signing out. Thank you for tuning into another empowering episode of Crown Level Confidence with Caliah Janae. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation and found it both insightful and inspiring. If you'd like to be a featured guest on the show and share your journey of confidence and self-belief, please reach out to me at podcast@caliahjanae.com. I'm always eager to connect with remarkable individuals who have a story to tell. And for those interested in connecting with me for speaking engagements or mindset coaching, you can find more information on my website, caliahjanae.com. I'd love to hear from you and explore how we can work together to inspire and empower others. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform so you never miss an episode filled with actionable tips and heartfelt stories. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd truly appreciate it if you could leave a review on your preferred podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners and inspire even more people to straighten their crowns. Remember, your journey to unstoppable confidence is a continuous adventure. I'm happy to support you every step of the way. Keep believing in yourself, keep shining, and always wear your crown with pride. Until next time, this is Caliah Janae, your host, signing off. Stay confident, stay empowered, and keep leveling up.